Welcome back to episode 2 of the OAC TV broadcasts. I'm James Zervios.
And I'm Christy Kuna. We're so happy to be back with you on our second episode of this broadcast. I guess folks liked it. We got picked up for a second episode, right?
I think the thousands of people watching all around the world loved the first episode, and thankfully we did get picked up for a second episode.
We did. And as a reminder, if you did miss that episode, it was our first one last month, you can go to OAC's Facebook page to view it and also our YouTube channel. And that's where we talked about myths. It was a really great interactive conversation. So if you've missed it, definitely go back and check it out. But yeah, so we're ready to kind of dive in. I think second broadcast in, we're going to give you guys a glimpse of what you're going to hear about today. So we're going to start again, of course, with our updates, what we've been doing in the news and all the activities. Then we're going to switch to what our trending topic is, which is very timely right now, politics, policies, and the current landscape. Lots to unpack there. And we're going to be joined on that segment by our own president and CEO, Joe Nadglowski, as well as our policy consultant, Chris Gallagher from DC. They'll be joining us here in a moment. And then our feature topic is about finding and using the power of your voice. So that is such a timely segue into all this conversation. And for that, we will be joined by the esteemed OAC Chair, Shelly Vicari from Temecula, California. So I think we're in for another great broadcast today.
And definitely stay with us for the entire show today, because there's a lot more that we're going to be able to give away, because we have special giveaways. You've seen the promos all week long. Of course, we have the official OAC coffee mug, or tea, as we said last time, dishwasher safe.
Top rack only. And then, of course, our new giveaway item today is the journal, OAC's official journal. This is a hot commodity. So how you want to do this, you want to make sure you comment in the comment feature on the Facebook Live. So do that. Tell us where you're from. We want to hear. Tell us some feedback along the way. This is meant to be really interactive, so definitely make use of that.
And we know it's been a crazy year. I think 2020 is one for the books. And with the holidays approaching us, especially with Thanksgiving right around the corner, we know there's a lot to be thankful for. And, you know, Christy, before we get started today, what are some of the things that you're thankful for this year?
Oh, gosh. So I think that definitely this year has been one for the books. Everyone can agree to that. But I think that one of the things that I've reflected on in the last, several weeks or so as we're nearing the end of the year, Thanksgiving next week, and you think about this, is that, we truly were forced to have a different pace of life. And I think we can all have a little bit of sense of gratefulness for that. I think it's taught us a lot about being able to just stop for a moment, enjoy those moments. I have a daughter who's, growing up each and every day, like more than, I think she came in the office the other day and everyone's like, where did she come from? She was so tall. And it's so true. So not letting those moments pass by, I think this year gave us a chance to enjoy those little moments. What about you, James?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with a lot of it. And I think for me this year, I'm thankful, even though COVID had us working remote and still for a majority of the year, I was able to see my son take his first steps. And so that was really wonderful. And then, of course, the holidays are upon us, and he's 16, 17 months old now. So to have Christmas with him and whatnot is going to be a lot of fun. This is a fun age, so we're looking forward to that. And of course, we're thankful for all of you as well. So everybody watching, this again, episode 2. I already see the chat is on fire with people watching from all over the world, and we'll get to that in a moment. But we're very thankful that we've been able to bring you this content in a different way, through the broadcast.
Yeah, and continue this great work that we do. But it wouldn't be possible without each and every one of you watching. So let's take a second and just say hi to our followers. I do see that we have new faces joining and some familiar ones too, which is always fantastic, and it looks global already. So we have Laura from Kuwait was our first one that we saw here. Laura, welcome. We're so happy to have you back. I think you were on last broadcast.
It looks like Michelle from Buffalo, New York is watching. Probably a little colder there than it is here in Tampa, Florida, but welcome.
Yes. We have Sarah watching from Miami, not too far from here. Wonder if that could be our Sarah Bramlett. We'll see. She's a board member.
Looks like Gail's watching from Vancouver, which is maybe even colder than Buffalo. I don't know.
Absolutely. And then we have Lizette watching from Tacoma, DC, it looks like. So welcome, Lizette. Happy to have you.
And Susie is watching from Dublin, Ireland.
I think Susie's back. I remember her on the last one
Yes, welcome
too.
back to episode 2, Susie.
It's always good to have new faces and those familiar faces. So we do get folks joining along the way too. So so keep those comments going and keep interacting with one another. This is what this broadcast is about, is to be able to not only have us talk to you guys, but also to be able to interact with one another. So it's another great opportunity.
Definitely. And we know that, as you guys are following along with us, and we want to know, what are you all thankful for as well? And so we've asked you to tell us what you're thankful for. And we've got some great submissions here, so we'll go through a couple of them. So looks like Laura is grateful for how technology can keep our communities connected. This broadcast is a perfect example. Thank you very much, Laura.
Very nice. Thank you so much. Yeah, we did source these ahead of time just to kind of have this, going into Thanksgiving. And so it is great to see these. And we have one shared from Michelle, and she says she is thankful for my health, my family's health, and my ability to continue working from home. I do think that's a blessing as well, definitely.
It looks like Nancy says she is thankful for my great family and friends in these challenging times. Nancy, I agree with you 100%.
Yes, absolutely. So, yeah, so you're welcome to keep those up and tell us what you're thankful for. This is kind of what this episode's about, along with some other really interesting, thought-provoking topics. But, we'll jump right into the first of this. So let's talk about what's been going on. We continue to stay busy. I do think that during this time, we generally want to get into what we call holiday mode, and maybe you guys feel the same way in your own work. But I feel like holiday mode doesn't ever stop here. It definitely is still going. So, but it's a good thing. That means the work is continuing. And the first update I think we want to give is around Obesity Week. We did touch on this last broadcast to talk about this meeting that was happening. It has already taken place. OAC was a strong participant in that. Patient voice was represented. So maybe fill folks in on a little bit about those happenings and what recap on what Obesity Week is.
Yeah, we talked a little bit last time that Obesity Week is really that meeting of professionals in the obesity space. So it's put on by the Obesity Society, and it was a great event. Of course, like every event this year, they held it virtually. And so there were a lot of things that they covered in there. We had patient representation from the OAC, so that was wonderful to be able to have OAC members there speaking on behalf of the patient journey. There was also a lot of information that came out about weight bias, so that was very interesting to see. One of the research publications that we had there was that in the U.S., people are beginning to blame people less for their obesity than they had been in the past, which is a good trend. We hope that trend continues. And then, of course, we also saw some really promising data from a lot of our partners out there about obesity treatments.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the remarkable things. OAC's always attended this meeting of scientists and researchers, and oftentimes it's, what does this mean for patients? And what I think is really remarkable about what comes about those meetings is to see the innovation that continues with treatments. It is constantly evolving. Meetings like that really do help us keep a pulse on that, as well as the research and bias. It's always good to see that the research and bias continues. And that honestly has really, been a more recent occurrence, I would say, that it's coming up more. So that's certainly very exciting.
Yeah, it was a lot of great information, and we applaud the Obesity Society for putting on a great virtual meeting as well. It's not easy. We did it in the summer, and so we give you guys a lot of credit for that. Shifting gears a little bit to some of the OAC activities. So Joe Nadglowski, OAC's president and CEO, joined us last time. He'll be joining us a little bit later today as well. He was on a webinar for the Black Women's Health Imperative. And this was a fantastic webinar. If you haven't had a chance to see it, you can learn more about it on our OAC blog. You'll see the URL down at the bottom of your screen there. And Joe was on a distinguished panel. And Christy, some of the things that came out of this webinar were fascinating, some of the facts. So 4 out of 5 Black women deal with obesity. Self-control is often listed as their reason for obesity, right? And so that really plays into the bias that they face. In addition to the racial and gender bias, they talked a lot about this, how often people think that it's all about self-control.
I think it's also remarkable that the OAC had a seat at that table, and I think this is a great signal to progress. It's certainly a huge priority of ours to continue to reach into all communities, and so I was excited to see that we were welcomed there.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, I think one of the things when I watched the webinar that you see is that there was this realization, especially with Joe representing the OAC there, that a lot of the hurdles that are facing that community right now are faced by people with obesity on a daily basis. So things like access to care, access to stigma-free care, if you will, So it was really good. And again, you can check that out on the OAC blog. You can learn more about that as well.
Excellent. So a couple things also that are going to be coming your way to your inbox in terms of OAC's activities is that we are going to be launching our annual survey very soon. I think it's actually going to be just in the next couple days. So those of you who are connected to us on our email list, you will get a direct invite to take this survey. It's a great way that we keep a pulse on our community members, lets us know what we're doing right, what you want to see us doing more of. And so definitely lend your voice. There's a great incentive to do the survey as well. So definitely take a look at that whenever you do get it. And as we approach the end of the year, we're also gearing up for our end of the year appeal efforts, which is our fundraising campaign that we always do at the end of the year. And this is a really important time that we have our members and followers and anyone who really does care about this cause help support this organization through a financial contribution. And Giving Tuesday, which a lot of you know about, which is the day of giving that's happening on December the 1st, all charities participate in this. OAC will definitely be participating in Giving Tuesday, and that really does kick off our end of the year appeal. So we would appreciate if you would consider OAC in your end of the year giving, and definitely stay tuned to your email for more information on that.
And don't forget, speaking of giving and giveaways, if you are interested in the fabulous giveaways we talked about today, you're going to want to make sure that you're commenting in the feed. We'll be choosing folks at random at the end of the broadcast. So please remember to comment, and we will give to you as well.
Absolutely. So we're going to shift gears into our final part of this segment, which is our advocacy update. As you know, we have promised each broadcast to bring you the latest and greatest in what's happening in advocacy. It's sometimes a really intimidating topic, but we are always focused on bringing it to you in an easy to understand way. And what better topic to talk about when it comes to advocacy is what's happening in the political landscape right now. Obviously, the 2020 elections have been such an interesting time here in the United States. But with elections comes just a changing political landscape and its effects. And so we wanted to dive into that because we did talk about some of our legislation last broadcast. But with this change, we wanted to really talk about what would that do to the legislation that we work on. So, but I also know folks probably want to get a glimpse on our general advocacy activities all the time.
Yeah, I think when people hear advocacy, it's not always the easiest word to digest. And sometimes people don't know exactly what that means. And when it comes to policy, the OAC is very active when it comes to advocacy. Quite often, our president and CEO, Joe Nadglowski, will be on Capitol Hill at least once, if not twice a month. Now those visits are being done virtually. And of course, alongside him is Chris Gallagher, the OAC's policy consultant, who we'll hear from in just a moment. But I think people don't always know that the OAC is advocating on the federal and the state level. So you probably have heard us talk a lot about the Treat and Reduce Obesity Act. That's our federal legislation. And then, of course, we're also very active on the state level, too.
Well, I suggest we go ahead and jump right into that topic and what is our trending topic segment, which is politics, policies, and the current landscape. And I think no one better to talk about this than our own OAC president and CEO that we're inviting back. He's down the hall, just a few doors down as we social distance, as well as OACs. He's joined today by our policy consultant, Chris Gallagher in Washington, D.C. OAC does have a full-time policy consultant. Chris is our eyes and ears on the ground in D.C. We're so honored to have both of you here to talk about this complicated and interesting topic. Welcome, guys.
Hello.
Thanks, Christy. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So, Joe, I think, obviously for months now, the headlines have just been absolutely dominated here in the U.S. with the election and politics and whatnot, and that's continuing to this day. But we know that it can be confusing for viewers and those tuning in with us today, or those will be watching this broadcast maybe later on in the day or the week. What do all of these changes mean? And can you and Chris kind of help walk us through this and see how this impacts people?
Thanks, James. Happy to do so. And I think I want to start off just with an assurance to our members that although we have to work in the political environment, the issue of obesity, our cause, isn't overly political. We have supporters on both sides of the aisle, whether they be Democrats, Republicans, independents, whatever it may be. People, when they see us from OAC, don't think that we're affiliated with any one group. They actually see this issue as an issue that needs to be addressed as a country. So that actually gives us, I think, makes our job a little easier. Chris, could you explain that some more and give us an idea of what you think the political landscape is currently, how it's going to currently affect us?
Sure, Joe, I'd be happy to. And I think you make an excellent point that be it Republican or Democrat, what we found over the last decade of the both of us going to Capitol Hill is that obesity is bipartisan in many ways. It affects both Republicans and Democrats. And given that, basically everyone we've met with, either face to face or via Zoom, is either possibly personally affected by overweight or obesity, or knows a family or a friend member who struggles with obesity. So, in many ways, we have a very receptive audience. So, we've seen over the past few years, political control of Congress may change, or the White House may change, or even at the state level, state houses flip and such. But we always have that receptive audience, and I think we've made tremendous strides in telling people about obesity and how it's a chronic disease and how it needs to be treated.
Thanks, Chris. And we really do appreciate your advocacy. For those of us that have had the honor of working with you over the years and going to Capitol Hill with you or talking to elected officials, we know you're a big part of making sure that our voice is heard and in Washington, D.C. And so since you mentioned at the end there the political change that's happened, and I know folks that are interested in that, what impact has the election had on our legislative priorities? So.
I think you'll see with issues such as the Treat and Reduce Obesity Act, or TROA, that is one of our major legislative priorities, and we've seen our support for that grow over the years. We have roughly 190 co-sponsors of TROA, the Treat and Reduce Obesity Act, and it's interesting to note with the election and those folks who have either lost their races or possibly passed away. John Lewis was a TROA co-sponsor. Other individuals like Cedric Richmond, a congressman from Louisiana, is now taking a role in the Biden administration. So political elections can sometimes upset the level of support we have for some of our legislative priorities. But we're hopeful that the new members of Congress coming in will be fresh targets for us to educate them about obesity and get their support.
So Chris, since you mentioned it, so two terms you used there, maybe you can help define. So first, tell us what the Treat and Reduce Obesity Act is. Tell us how you actually explain it to legislators. And then second, when you say the word co-sponsor, what does that mean as well? So.
Good questions. I guess we start to speak in Washington speak with acronyms, and TROA, or the Treat and Reduce Obesity Act, that we got introduced a few Congresses ago, and the purpose of the legislation is to plug two major treatment gaps in Medicare, which is the government program for seniors. And the first treatment gap deals with the fact that Medicare does not cover FDA-approved obesity drugs. And the second treatment gap deals with the fact that Medicare limits who can offer intensive behavioral therapy or counseling services for obesity to really just primary care providers. And we know while these folks do a great job, in many cases they don't have the education, the training, and or the time sometimes to deal with kind of a all hands on deck approach needed for counseling someone for obesity. So this legislation would allow folks like dietitians and clinical psychologists, obesity medicine specialists, endocrinologists, other individuals to treat Medicare patients affected by obesity. And I think the one thing we hear from people is, it's TROA, why do we care about Medicare? Isn't that for old people? And we found that as Medicare goes, so does private health insurance. So if you have something that is not widely covered, you really start your focus on Medicare because it's kind of the gold standard for coverage, Joe. So if we can get this passed and get Medicare coverage for these two critical treatment services, I think you'll see private plans follow suit rather quickly. You also mentioned co-sponsors, which is another kind of DC insider term, but basically a co-sponsor is either a House or Senate member who gets on the floor of their chamber, stands up and says, I would like to be listed as an official supporter of the Treat and Reduce Obesity Act or whatever legislation they support. And then they are actually added to the bill as listing as a co-sponsor, someone who co-supports this legislation. And as I said, we've got close to 190 co-sponsors in the House and Senate, and that's that's a pretty high watermark for getting co-sponsors.
So, Chris, I know you mentioned the co-sponsors and the importance of them as people indicating their support. So, how have we done if we look at states across the country in getting co-sponsors down to individual states, and who should we really be targeting to say, hey, it's these are the most important targets when it gets us to move the Treat and Reduce Obesity Act forward. So.
Sure. Well, in looking at the co-sponsorship, not only do we have the numbers, we have the broad support across the country. We've got roughly 43 states in the District of Columbia who have a member of their delegation who have co-sponsored TROA. So that's excellent. So basically only a handful of states don't have support. And in terms of people we are trying to focus on in these last 2 months of Congress, you're looking at really a handful of states. You've got Iowa, Oregon, Texas, Massachusetts, New Jersey, California, and these states are key because they have legislators in their state delegations who either chair or are the most senior member of the minority party on a key healthcare committee in Congress. So these states are particularly key. We need OAC members to reach out to these individuals and let them know about their support for the Treat and Reduce Obesity Act, because those are the people who can really turn the tide on this bill and get it included in a end of the year package.
Thanks, Chris. And this is really a call out to our folks who watch this. If you live in one of those states where you saw that we're in yellow, where we didn't actually have a co-sponsor for the Treat and Reduce Obesity Act, please write your legislator today and urge them to be part of that. And if you're in one of those target states with the key leadership, it'd be a good time to send another letter to your elected officials too, urging them to support the Treat and Reduce Obesity Act as we look at legislative activity at year end here. So, Chris, let's shift gears from the Treat and Reduce Obesity Act and talk about other priorities. So, you and I have spent now what seems like forever working on the Affordable Care Act, and you and I both have developed a love-hate relationship with it, because in some ways it's created a good coverage in certain states for folks, and in other places it's really limited coverage. But one of the provisions that we agree on that is very, very important is the pre-existing condition clause that basically lets people gain access to insurance if they have a pre-existing condition. It's particularly important for people who have obesity or are trying to buy insurance, because oftentimes they were excluded in the past prior to ACA because of their obesity, or if they've had, say, for example, a previous bariatric surgery, they couldn't get insurance coverage because that was considered a pre-existing condition. So what can you tell us about what's going on around, in effect, protecting the pre-existing condition clause?
Yes, that's a great question, Joe. And I think a lot of people had a lot of anxiety at the beginning of the month because the Supreme Court took up a critical case surrounding the Affordable Care Act and whether the Affordable Care Act, or ACA, should be declared unconstitutional. And I think a lot of people breathed a sigh of relief after hearing oral arguments. The justices, or a majority of the justices, appeared to think that the Affordable Care Act would be sticking around for a while. I think that's the bottom line. We won't find out for sure until the spring or summer when the court issues their rulings. But I think that was kind of step one. Step two, you're going to see a switch in the Biden-Harris administration coming in, because as you know, ACA is also called Obamacare, and that was an Obama-Biden administration who developed Obamacare. So Joe Biden has talked about taking steps to strengthen the Affordable Care Act. I know there's been, the current administration with President Trump has done a great deal to try and make health plans more affordable. But while they are more affordable, sometimes they don't include all the patient protections of the ACA. So I think you're going to see more of a strengthening of patient protections. And again, it'll be a very dynamic conversation with the Senate and House, because again, it's still a very thorny issue, even in the midst of a pandemic.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate that. And speaking of the pandemic, I'll throw another question at you related to that. So another interesting area that you and I have gotten involved in is around the distribution of COVID vaccines as they come forward. And OAC actually submitted some comments to the group that is determining the COVID vaccine distribution. What can you tell us about that?
Well, yeah, I think Joe, OAC sent a very strong letter, as well as other members of the obesity community reached out to the scientific community, the entity that was developing a priority list for who would get the new vaccine. And we applauded the scientific community for recommending that people affected by significant chronic conditions like obesity, like diabetes, there's about 9 of them that the CDC, or Centers for Disease Control, has identified that put you at significant risk for COVID. And that scientific entity came back and said, right behind healthcare professionals and first responders, we believe this group of people should be next in line to get a vaccine. And we've also been reaching out to the pharma companies to encourage them to include people affected by obesity in their vaccine trials, because in some cases these individuals are not included, and we really need to know how this vaccine would work on a majority of Americans who are affected by overweight and obesity.
Thanks, Chris. So two quick questions before we're going to get time called on us here. But one would be if any of our members are interested today in advocating for the Treat and Reduce Obesity Act, or even just contacting their legislator, what's the best way to do it?
I think the best way is through the OAC's Legislative Action Center. It is such a good tool to be able to go in there, see a series of issues like on TROA, the Treat and Reduce Obesity Act. You simply can enter in your name, address, and zip code, and you'll have a form letter that you can send up to your member of Congress and both senators. And we encourage you to be able to add some language to it. In many cases, you can add your own personal story, because that is what will rule the day up there, personal patient stories.
Yeah, let's go a little farther on that personal story, Chris. I think you and I have both experienced this. We've brought lots of doctors and other healthcare professionals and real experts in obesity to Capitol Hill, but whenever we go visit an office again, the staffers don't usually ask us about the healthcare professional. They ask us about the person we brought with us who shared their personal experience of living with obesity. So can you just emphasize to our folks how important those personal stories are? So.
That is so true. Often we bring in the surgeons and the dietitians and the nurse practitioners, the whole kind of treatment team, obesity medicine specialists, and they will rattle off sound policy arguments and statistics about obesity. But when that patient speaks up, usually that's when you see the congressional staff perk up, and it becomes real for them when they hear the story of how they've struggled with their weight, with their obesity, and how their inability to address treatment has really been problematic for them, or the fact that they have been successful at addressing treatment and are doing better to address their obesity, and how it's changed their lives. I think that is one of the most the deep impacts we have with Capitol Hill meetings, and that's why OAC patients are critical to any kind of advocacy we do. And I think that's why we work on training so many individuals every year through Your Weight Matters. And I'm looking forward to doing it again in person.
Thanks, Chris. And I just really want to emphasize that. I mean, how important your personal stories are. They really make all the difference in this advocacy work. They are more valuable than anything else we do. They're more valuable than money. They're more valuable than political will. They're more value than any of these things. Your stories do make a difference. So I would encourage you, if you haven't ever interacted with your elected officials, to do so and to really share that personal story. It is important. Well, Chris, we are officially out of time. I'm going to take us back to OAC studio and turn it back to James and Christy. And thanks so much for giving us this opportunity today.
Thank you.
We thank you guys very much for all of that. And we got a ton of questions that came in. And so I see Michelle asked a question, Lizette, Laura. We'll make sure to get these answered for you. Chris is great about always answering these questions. And, Michelle asked specifically, why is it so difficult to get legislation pertaining to obesity passed? Is it the social stigmas? And I don't want to answer for Chris, but I would say yes. I do think at the end of the day that weight bias is one of the biggest hurdles when it comes to obesity. I know we've done Hill visits, and many times you can tell sometimes that somebody just kind of says like, well, what if they just ate less and moved more, right?
Yeah, I think that's what kind of stuck out at me, is that it truly is, when we talk about the patient voice, when you do those Hill visits, I remember doing it for the first time and thinking, gosh, it's intimidating, but truly it was really advocacy working. It was really the patient voice that rose to the top, and that's the one people wanted to hear. And,
Right.
And I think that's what's important about this. I mean, there's so many great comments about how important TROA is. Thank you, Lizette, for sharing that. We agree. Believing in getting it approved and passed, and it does take the patient voice. But what's rooted in patient voices, it's not just about trying to get something you want passed through. It's about sharing your story. That's what really it is. Advocacy is all about, is real, especially in obesity, any causes of this nature, is it is about the person and their experience and journey. And so the importance of the patient voice and the sharing of the story is central to all of what we do when we come to advocacy. So I think that is a perfect segue to bring in our next special guest. We're so excited to have our OAC Chairwoman join us from Temecula, California. Welcome, Shelly. We're so happy to have you.
Hello.
Hi guys. How you doing?
So Shelly, we really, wanted you to talk about this and to really kind of, talk to our folks for a moment. Take that chairwoman hat off. You've been our chairwoman now for more than 2 years now. It's been such a great leadership wave you ran, and honestly, this is a time for us to really get to understand the patient side and the patient story of things. And taking your chairwoman hat off, there, when you think about your personal journey, and I know you're such an advocate for using your voice, action is your thing, right? But it really is rooted in the story. So maybe, we've heard your story, but I think other folks need to hear kind of how you came to the OAC and what has inspired you to get involved and now eventually become the leader of our organization.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah.
This is such an important topic, so I'm glad to be a part of it. So for those of you that don't know my story, for years I had really crummy healthcare experiences. I'm sure many in the audience today in the chat box can relate to walking in for strep throat and your doctor saying, if you only lost some weight, or, telling your symptoms to your doctor, and before you're done with your symptoms, they're already writing on a prescription pad. Before the ACA was in, and I know Joe and Chris just spoke about the ACA, but before those protections were in place for pre-existing conditions, I couldn't even get insurance. I was denied insurance. My obesity was considered a pre-existing condition, but I moved to a new area and I got a new job, and with that, some new insurance and a great new primary care provider. He was super awesome. It was the first kind of experience where I felt someone was really listening to me. He explained to me that some of the conditions he was treating me for, I had sleep apnea, I had severe GERD, high blood pressure. He told me, listen, I really think that you should look into bariatric surgery, think about it, research it, come back to me, we'll talk about it. And I did, and went back to him and said, hey, I think I want to do this. And so I started on that path and doing all the hoops and the clearances and seminars and all that. And about a month into the process, I picked up my bail and dropped it on my car seat and took off on my errands. And at my first stop, I looked down and I was like, oh, something from the insurance company. And I opened it up and it said that I was denied. So, I sat in my car, cried, sobbed in a parking lot. And I kind of let myself have that one day of sadness. I was upset. I had hope, and I thought that for the first time I was really listened to, and now I was thwarted. And I thought, this can't be fair. This is not right. And so I Googled and found the OAC. And I actually found our Working with Your Insurance Provider guide, which really helped me. I was so thankful for the information. I had gone to my policy and I didn't understand any of the gobbledygook language in there. And so you also had a template for an appeal letter in there. And so it was really helpful. But more than that, it was helpful that there was a whole group of people out there that, thought that this was wrong too. And so I was really, really, really thankful that somebody else was out there.
Yeah, and that's, reflecting on that, that was what, 12 years ago that that was about then. I know you've been part of the leadership team here for past 9 years or so, but gosh, you think about that, so much was different back then, and how much progress we've been able to make. But I do think we appreciate you sharing your story. It's one that I know we've heard, but it really was an impactful way that I think so many viewers at home probably are nodding their heads thinking something similar, that what brought them here was something of just didn't make any sense, and that there, finally was a group that stood up for them. So, but I think the progress is really interesting if you think about that.
Yeah, and especially the time, right? So Shelly, you talked about how long you've kind of been a part of OAC, and basically since 2/3 of our existence, almost the whole time. OAC is turning 16 next year in 2021, or our Sweet 16 that we'll be having. But during that time, there's been so many successes and so much progress made during the OAC's existence. And what would you attribute to the OAC membership? Because we know at the heart of it, that's really what drives change in the obesity space.
Yeah, sadly, there are still people like me that are being denied access to care and being denied treatment. And there are still people that are facing bias in healthcare and in employment and education and in the media. My God, just going through Twitter feeds, sometimes I see pictures and I go, this is just so wrong. But we're chipping away at it. And the best part is that there are more and more voices that are challenging it and sharing their stories and their experiences. Just this past 2 years alone, OAC's gained 20,000 community members, so that's awesome, more voices. And I also think that there's a greater understanding of obesity as a chronic disease. We know that healthy eating and we know that moving our body helps, and it helps any chronic disease, but that there's much more than that to it, and that's positive progress. And so years ago, I think of depression. And people used to say ignorant things to people who had depression. They'd say, well, you just need to smile more or buck up or cheer up. And now we know that that is not only not helpful advice, but it's downright harmful advice and wrong. And because we know that there's much more going on. And so my hope is that obesity will soon be the same. And, it's starting because I see, science out there, and I see our study, and I see people sharing their stories and experiences. And last month we did that great episode on myths and misunderstandings. So we're chipping away. So
The power of the OAC membership. And Deb, who's tuning in with us today, says our stories are so important. Check out the OAC's Weight of the World platform, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But
definitely.
I think it just speaks to what you said, Shelly, on how the stories of OAC members really help drive everything that we're fighting for forward. And they're that vehicle to get us past that next milestone, if you will.
Yeah, and I think one of those, Shelly, that so many times we see so much reluctance in someone who, is affected by obesity to want to stand up and find their voice because of the stigmas. And it's tough to be so vocal about something that's not yet widely accepted as a disease, and that, so many have so many different perceptions about, which of course we're trying to change with our membership. So what would you say to someone in that position to how do they find their voice, kind of jump out of their comfort zone, and why is that so important?
So you remember those books when you were little, the Choose Your Own Adventure, where you had the character and then it was like, if you want them to do this, turn to page 200. That's how I look at advocacy. I mean, truly, you can make it what you want it to be. So if you want to be the person who talks to their legislators and helps us in that way, that's a great thing. If you want to share your story on Weight of the World and just, share an experience that you had with obesity, bias, access to care. We have this cool video thing where you can just, sit there with your iPhone and upload a video, and that's going to help us having those stories. We have an Advocacy 101 video series that'll give you a ton of ideas. We have an OAC Action Center where you can visit, and there's all sorts of tasks that you can do. One thing that everyone can do right now that's on this broadcast right now, you can follow the OAC on their social media pages and like and share and comment. I don't know whether many people know, but just because you like a page on Facebook doesn't mean that it ends up in your news feed. And it's especially hard for nonprofit organizations to get in people's, eyes. Get the eyes on their stuff. So the more you interact with us, the more it helps. And that's advocacy. Literally anything that you do to help is advocacy. So you can make it what you want it to be. And it can be as in-depth or not. And truly, if you reach out to any of the OAC board members, we'll have a chat with you and try and find a place for you and something you can do that you feel comfortable with. So there's something for everyone.
Yeah, I love that choose your own adventure. I often, in all this time, doing this work, it is all about that. And you'll find things that really, are your gifts and talents and what's in your interest to do. But, and I think there's something for everybody, right?
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that and some of those couple plugs that we'll talk about too, because there are a lot of ways that OAC helps make that process a lot easier.
Shelly, you talked about so many great things this afternoon, and I think one thing that I was kind of thinking about a little bit is reflecting on your defining moment, right? So why was that experience so important in your life? How did it shape your journey so far? And what would you say to someone that is in that or looking to figure out what that first step is right now? So for that person that they received that denial letter today in the mail, or they had that bad visit with their doctor and they're trying to do something about their weight, they're trying to improve their health, what would you tell that person?
So I want to share a quote with the audience today that has been meaningful to me. It is, at any given moment, you have the power to say, this is not how your story is going to end. And so, when I had that experience and I was sitting in the car sobbing, I didn't want my story to end with the girl sitting in her car sobbing. And so thankful for the OAC that they led me to a next chapter. And I don't want anyone to have that story end and by facing bias or stigma or an access issue. So I'm just thankful to the OAC that, you're not alone in this fight. So come join us, join forces with each other. Our community members, 20,000 in the last 2 years alone, 70,000+ strong, but we want more. And so we hope that you join us and we'll fight together and make the world a better place for people with obesity.
Well said. I love ending on that note of, this isn't the end of your story. I think that's so powerful, but we are so thankful for your leadership, Shelly. I mean, I know you mentioned that you were thankful, but I think we share the same sentiment that you've really been so integral in letting our voices become even more powerful in your tenure as our chairs. So we thank you for that, and we hope yes, and we hope that next episode is our special holiday episode. So we hope you come back there. I think we have some special things planned for that. So we hope you join us again for that, because it'll be we'll get a chance to also get to know Patty, who's our incoming chairs. You guys work still close together, but we hope that you'll come back and talk to us again.
Awesome. You're going to love her. Hey. Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shelly. Awesome. Well, so as Shelly mentioned already, we do have so many great resources. As you think about how you want to share your voice and really get more involved, we have some great resources to share with you. Our Weight of the World is our video collection library that is really meant to share your story in a video format and provide support to individuals. It's weightoftheworld.com. I think on the image right now you'll see that. So definitely visit weightoftheworld.com to look at the stories and submit your own. It's such an important way that you think that you can give back and to help others. You would be so surprised of the support that's offered through those. So definitely take that leap of faith and do a video yourself. We also have OAC's Action Center. It is, as Chris Gallagher mentioned in his, it's so easy to be able to contact your legislators and to be able to really get those letters and put your personal story in those letters as well. So the Action Center is at obesityaction.org/action-center. So check that out. We have some great important issues already on there that need your attention.
And I think Shelly really hit the nail on the head with this is not the end of your story, right? And so I think that's where OAC can come in and really be that next step to help people in their journey. And so we want to again thanks Shelly very much for joining us today, and definitely check out those resources.
Well, and social media is her thing. She is egg face for those of you who follow her. And so I think, you saw on the graphic too that we did have ways for you to stay connected to our social channels. There are so many opportunities that we put on social media in order to do that. So definitely make sure you like us, follow us, tweet us, whatever you need to do to stay connected, as well as also be part of our email list too. Those are great ways to stay connected. And so we would encourage you to do so. So I think that we have sadly come to the end of our second broadcast. I can't believe it already.
Episode 2, it goes by real quick, and we
does.
prepare for these, and then when we're in it, I think it goes by a lot faster than we did. And because it's the end, that means it's
Giveaway time. That's right. So let's take a look. We are having our team who randomly draw the lucky winners of our two beautiful grand prizes today. I think, James, you're going to take the first one here.
Yes, so this beautiful mug will be going to Lizette Christine. So congratulations, Lizette.
Congrats, Lizette.
This will be coming your way soon.
Yeah, and so definitely we're going to reach out to the winners on social media, so make sure you check your messages on Facebook, and we'll be able to get that to you. And our second beautiful esteemed prize, which is our coveted OAC journal, is going to go to Donna McKay Casnell. Congratulations, Donna.
Congrats.
You're going to love this. This is a perfect way to get into the holiday spirit to do some journaling, so love that. But we are so excited to continue to do this broadcast. I mean, I think that so far it seems that folks like it, and
I hope so.
The chatter looks really good. So, and I think what's great is that people can watch it later too. So if you have friends that maybe missed this and you think that the topics, I think especially that the politics topic was really interesting in the political landscape, share it. Make sure people are able to know this is happening, and we want this to become kind of a monthly routine for you guys. So speaking of monthly, when are we coming back to everybody?
So our next one is next month, December. I'm going to want to make sure I get the date right. December 16th at 3 p.m. Eastern.
That's
so
right.
Please join us once again for that one. We'll have some great content for you guys.
And more giveaways.
More giveaways.
Maybe better giveaways for our special holiday episode. We'll see.
And in between now and then, we want you guys to stay connected with us as well. We talked a lot about social media today, and beyond that too, if you're not yet connected to OAC, you can actually go on our website as well, of obesityaction.org, and get connected with us. Sign up for some of our information, our newsletters that we can send out to you. And then, of course, if you have ideas for this show, if you want us to cover topics that we've not yet covered, you can email them to social@obesityaction.org, and we're happy to take those thoughts and comments and feedback. Let us know how we're doing. Again, episode 2, we're thankful we got picked up, but we're excited to continue with this.
You could even vote for which host you like best. That might be interesting.
Ooh, that could be tough.
Know.
That could be tough. I don't know. We'll see. We'll
We're
report
in
on that next
We're
time.
in a dueling battle with this, right?
Yes.
In a friendly way. But no, thank you guys so much for spending your time with us. We will see you next month. Mark your calendars, December the 16th. For now, we'll sign off. And
we want to wish everyone a very happy and healthy Thanksgiving. We look forward to
Absolutely.
seeing everybody next month.
And enjoy the time. Thank you guys so much.
Goodbye.